Hello everyone. Welcome to our session today. I'm excited to introduce you to our topic, Mega Goal 3.3. Today we'll be focusing on Unit 9 with the theme Beauty is Only Skin Deep, and we'll be exploring some important grammar points along the way. In this presentation, we'll cover key ideas about beauty perceptions and how language helps us express these concepts. So let's dive in and get started. Today, we're focusing on lesson objectives related to noun clauses. First, we'll look at the verbs that are often followed by a noun clause. Recognizing these verbs is key because they help us understand how noun clauses function within sentences. Next, we'll explore how to use a noun clause as the subject of a sentence, which is a common and important structure in English. We'll also practice identifying adjectives that follow noun clauses, since these can give us more information about the clause itself. Finally, we'll cover noun clauses beginning with that, so you can see how to use this word effectively to introduce a clause. Throughout this lesson, the goal is to build your confidence in recognizing and using noun clauses correctly, connecting these concepts to improve your overall language skills. Let's take a closer look at what a noun clause is. A noun clause is a group of words that functions like a noun in a sentence. To identify a noun clause, you can ask questions like, who or what about the part of the sentence? For example, in the sentence, I hope you can come to the game. The clause, you can come to the game, is a noun clause. Now, here's an interesting point. In some cases, the word that can be omitted in a noun clause, making the sentence more concise. For example, I hope that you can come can be shortened to I hope you can come. Let's look at another example. Take the sentence, I think that Mr. Ali is a good teacher. Here, that Mr. Ali is a good teacher is the noun clause. Notice that introduces the clause, and it's a common way to introduce noun clauses. The key takeaway is that noun clauses are often introduced by the word that. They help us add more information, opinions, or thoughts in a sentence. Recognizing these clauses helps us understand and construct more complex sentences effectively, which is essential for mastering English grammar. All right, let's talk about noun clauses. Now, a key thing to remember is that in a noun clause, the word that can sometimes be omitted. For example, in the sentence, the teachers expect that their students will try their best. The clause that their students will try their best is a noun clause. But often we can leave out that and say the teachers expect their students will try their best, and it still makes sense. Similarly, in Sarah knows that she was right, we could drop the that and say Sarah knows she was right. This flexibility is useful because it helps make our sentences more concise and natural. So the main point here is that a noun clause acts as a noun in the sentence, and the word that is optional at times. Remembering this will help you identify and use noun clauses more effectively in your writing and speaking. On this slide, we're focusing on how to correctly use be in sentences that include noun clauses as complements. Remember, be can take different forms like am, is, or are depending on the subject. For example, in the sentence, he is certain that his friend forgot their appointment. The phrase that his friend forgot their appointment is a noun clause acting as a complement. It's giving us more information about what he's certain of. Similarly, with I am glad that you have decided to leave the job. The clause that you have decided to leave the job explains what makes me glad. The key point here is that noun clauses often begin with that and serve to complete the meaning of the adjective or verb. It's important to note that in some cases, especially in spoken or informal English, we can omit that without changing the meaning. Understanding how to incorporate these noun clauses correctly helps us make our sentences clearer and more precise. Let's take a closer look at the slide. Here, we're focusing on how adjectives and verbs work together in sentences. First, we have the structure where an adjective describes a subject, such as disappointing or obvious. These adjectives help give us more detail about the subject. Next, we see the verb be linking the adjective to the subject, like in it is disappointing or it is obvious. This VB construction is very common when expressing opinions or states. Then we have the subject, which can be a noun or a noun clause. For example, that he can't come or that they are great friends. Notice how these clauses act as the subject, and they often start with that. An important point to remember is that sometimes, especially in informal speech or writing, we can omit that when the meaning is clear. Overall, this structure is very useful for expressing feelings, opinions, or observations about people or situations in a clear and natural way. It connects to our broader theme of understanding sentence structures that help us communicate more effectively. So, throughout our journey, I noticed that recognizing small changes in behavior can really make a difference. I discovered that understanding these cues helps us respond more effectively. I thought that many misunderstandings stem from assumptions rather than facts, which is something we should always keep in mind. Sometimes, people are just complaining that they feel unheard or overlooked, and that's a signal for us to listen more carefully. I know that building awareness around these patterns can improve communication significantly. I hope that by paying attention to these details, we can foster better connections and reduce conflicts. And finally, I forget that sometimes I need to remind myself not to jump to conclusions too quickly. Remember, noticing and understanding these subtle cues can truly transform our interactions. I'm quite surprised that you don't like coffee. It's interesting how people's tastes can vary so much, isn't it? This slide highlights how certain emotions or reactions can be unexpected, which ties into our overall theme of understanding different perspectives and expressions. For example, sometimes we assume everyone shares our preferences or feelings, but then we encounter surprises like this. Recognizing these differences helps us communicate better and become more empathetic. So, keep in mind that surprises can be positive or negative, but either way, they remind us of the diversity in how we experience the world. So, here we see the stylist looking pretty disappointed because the customer isn't happy with his haircut. It's a clear sign that something didn't go as planned. The customer, on the other hand, is voicing his dissatisfaction, making it obvious that he didn't get the result he was hoping for. This kind of situation highlights the importance of clear communication and understanding client expectations. And then, we have the other customer who's watching all of this unfold, and you can see he's worried. He's afraid he might end up with a bad haircut too. This slide really emphasizes how crucial it is for professionals to manage client expectations and handle dissatisfaction gracefully. It ties into the larger theme of customer service and ensuring a positive experience, even when things don't go perfectly. Friends are great, aren't they? They bring so much positivity into our lives. When we think about who we can rely on, it's often our friends that come to mind first. Today, I want to emphasize how important these relationships are, especially in challenging times. Now, looking at the phrase, that today rain won't, it might seem a bit confusing at first glance, but what I want to highlight is the certainty we can have about certain outcomes. For instance, I am certain that today, the rain won't spoil our plans. It's a simple example, but it underscores the confidence we can have when we understand the situation clearly. It's also obvious that some things are just certain, like the value of true friends. They truly are great and dependable. When we recognize these constants, it helps us stay grounded and optimistic. So, in summary, whether it's about trusting in the presence of friends or confidently predicting the weather, understanding what's certain helps us navigate life more smoothly. And that's what I want you to take away from this slide. Trust in what's clear and cherish the great friends in your life. Now, let's take a look at the final slide, which focuses on the workbook exercise and homework. On this slide, you'll see that we're referring to pages 312, specifically sections C through D. This means you'll want to turn to those pages in your workbook and complete the exercises provided there. These exercises are designed to reinforce what we've covered today, so I encourage you to approach them thoughtfully and thoroughly. Remember, the purpose here is to solidify your understanding and apply the concepts we've discussed. Once you've completed the exercises, I recommend reviewing your answers to see where you might need further clarification or practice. This homework is an essential part of your learning process, so I encourage you to set aside some time to do it diligently. Connecting this practice back to our overall theme, these exercises help you internalize the material and prepare you for real-world application. So make sure to give it your best effort. That wraps up our session, and I look forward to seeing your progress in the next steps.